Hello, everyone. I definitely put up the wrong intro there. So all those people I just named won't be here, but some of them will be here. We have two more people that are joining us in a few minutes. Thank you, Facebook user, for being on time. Who's watching? Awesome. So tonight we are doing a writers Q&A. This is through Woe Nelly Media's online community, which is called the Writers Room. It's through Facebook groups. If you would like to join the community, we'd love to have you. We do daily writing challenges. We do live readings of each other's work. It's a space for writers to get together and do peer critique, peer evaluations, and we just support each other. It's a very positive workspace. We're definitely honest and critical, but we also are constructive with our criticism. So today we're going to do a Q&A. We have two more people joining us, but we're just going to talk some about things that we feel like we asked as new writers and things that other writers may want to know. If you're joining us from the comments, please feel free to ask a question and we will try to answer it. So just a little bit about myself. We got somebody coming in. Hey.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. I had some technical difficulties and it was driving me nuts, but I'm here now.
It's okay. Okay, we're here now. So let's go around and do introductions really quick. Why don't you start, Lena?
Hi, my name is Lena DeLoach. I am a writer and producer and actress. Currently, I'm working at Mattel as a creative development manager. But currently I'm on maternity leave. So
right, doing all those important little baby jobs. I like babies. They're so wonderful. Okay, so Summer.
Hello. My name is Summer Hiley. We all wear multiple hats, so actor, writer, producer, director, drag performer extraordinaire with the House of Alexander. I'm also leading arts and programming with a pretty popular nonprofit group in Atlanta called Southern Fried Queer Pride. And I like to get into delving into stories and topics that don't get explored.
Excellent. And I am Duryea Rashad. I'm a digital media producer. I am the founder and artistic director at Woe Nelly Media, which you can find by going to woenellymedia.com. That's WOE. I'm also, like we said, we all three of us wear many hats. We're all actors. I want to say primarily, well, not primarily, but that was our first love. But we also, all of us write. I write generally screenplays. I haven't been produced yet, and I write novels. I'm also a director. I have my degree in directing and acting, performing, and so that's the angle that I come from when it comes to writing. Is I'm very story based about telling a full story and being descriptive that way. So the way our Q&A works is we each have brought a few questions. It's not going to be a very long session. We've each brought a few questions. We'll ask the questions to the group. We'll discuss the questions, and then we'll wrap up here at the end, unless someone in the viewers or the comments has any questions, and we'll answer those live. Would you like to go first, Lena?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm pulling up the group so I can see if anyone drops in on Facebook. But the first question that I wanted to bring today, because I had this experience in the last few weeks, actually, because one of the brands that I work with reached out to me to get some writing samples from some colleagues. And so that's what I wanted to talk about first, was what a writing sample is. Yeah, so I'll just jump in. So sometimes, I'm sure some of you have heard of having a writing packet. That is something that's a little more traditional, that was expected for people who are looking for writing in film and television to have, which was basically, it's like your audition book for writing, where you have a selection of things that you've worked on. It could be a screenplay and a pilot. It could be 2 pilots. It could be a collection of sketches. Just a sampling of your best work that you could then share with, maybe a network executive or a manager or an agent that you're talking to, or you could send it to someone who's looking to hire you to write. And that's kind of what the situation was that I was just talking about this week. Nowadays, I find that writing packets are a little less prevalent. I don't see them as often. I think what people now, the way that they phrase it is they want a writing sample. And that's a little more ambiguous, which can make it like easier and harder, depending on how you look at it. I would, from my personal experience with reading writing samples and submitting writing samples, consider the source, think about who's getting it. You may not have the perfect sample for the job you're trying to get, and that is totally okay. Honestly, they just want to make sure that you're a competent writer. If they want something specific, they will probably ask for it. But that said, if you have the time and you want to do something on spec, which is like when you say something, you write something on spec, that's like you're writing something specifically for a project that you want to work on. So it might be like you write a sample episode of, I know the show has ended, but like The Big Bang Theory. So that way you have that type of writing sample for those kinds of shows. Or you could write even just a few short scenes. And this is something kind of that new that I would recommend to writers is if you don't have the perfect sample for the job you're going for and you have the time, it might be worth writing up a really fun short scene. If it's a horror movie and you don't have any horror samples, write a quick horror scene. Same thing for if it's a comedy or a rom-com, or digital videos for toys in the version that I was talking about. And so that's the first question that I wanted to address and the first answer that I wanted to circulate around it. And I'd love to get y'all's thoughts too as to what you think about when you think about submitting a writing sample.
So just so I can get on board with you, how long would you say a writing sample should be, in the sense of reading it out or a time on screen?
Well, like if you're submitting full scripts that you've already written, just go ahead and submit those. 100%, they will not have the time to read the whole thing, but you don't want to not send the whole thing. It's not even worth trying to figure out where to cut it. Just send the whole pilot or screenplay. When it comes to if you're going to write a scene specifically for them to read to get a sense of if you could do this gig or this job, I would keep it short, 3 pages max. And that might also give you that might also give you the opportunity to write more than one. Where you could write a couple 3-page scenes that are in the same vein or tone as what you're going for. Or, in the sense of writing a spec script specifically for a show that you want to work on, you could write an entire episode script for that. And that's not a bad thing to have in your repertoire, because even if you're not submitting for that show specifically, guaranteed there's a lot of other projects that fall in that bucket that writing sample spec script could be used for. So it's kind of a variety of things that, if you're working on your writing and you want to just kind of get all of your pockets full of things to have, and you could just like pull out whenever you have the opportunity, it's just good to be really prepared and to have great stuff to send out for anyone who says, send me your stuff. Like, you want to have it ready.
So if I ask, sorry to cut you off, Summer. If I ask,
I remember.
Which would you say is better to have? Is it better to have one really well-written piece of like full script or full story, or like a few or a couple of options of shorter things?
I mean, if it was like a desert island choice, where you could only choose one or the other,
right.
I would go with the full. Just because that's a complete creative project that someone could then lock into and produce with you, or or start shopping. Whereas the smaller things, they're not really something someone's going to make. They're just your audition as a writer.
A part of me feels as if like.
Okay, so my response. Did you want to respond first, Summer?
Yeah. What was he saying?
Oh no, I was just saying, I'm like so on the fence. I love the idea of like looking at every genre that maybe I haven't like sink my teeth into, and then see how I can put my stamp on everything. Because I'm thinking, who has the time to read a full project? And also, I don't want to put so much energy into a specific genre that I haven't really, sunk my teeth into. So I love that. It makes me think between the spectrums of that.
Yeah, you can kind of dip your toes in and get a sense of it. And honestly, it's a great exercise as a writer anyways. And we should be like sharpening our skills always anyway. So, kind of like you could treat it as a writing exercise that then you can just put over in the folder that you use to submit for writing jobs. So, it's a win-win.
For me personally, it's crazy because I've actually recently submitted a writing sample, and
Congrats.
I have. Thank you. But it wasn't a sample; it was a whole. It was an entire body of work. And I remember there was an opportunity for me to submit another writing sample. They specifically asked for a completed pilot, and I did not have the time to write. I don't think it would have been a good representation of my writing for me to write what I could in the amount of time. So I didn't submit. It kind of sucks, but I didn't submit. But to me, I think when it comes to that, you have to be careful, because sometimes your best work is the work that you want to protect. Yeah. And what I mean by, because for me, my best work, I call it my best work because I've been working on it the longest, is something that I'd rather be connected to as a writer instead of just selling. So when I do find opportunities for sample scripts, it's interesting that you said that, because I would rather do a 3-page something, because I could really clearly show you that I'm capable as a writer
and it would
quickly
tailor to that job
and cater it to that job. But if I have to write an entire piece, I'm too meticulous. I'm too because to me, I love when the plot and the structure, and I love building tension, and I love all of that, and I like to really take the viewers through an experience, and that's not always easy to do on a first draft.
Well, and one thing that I'll tell you that might simplify things too is I've used the same pilot 3 different times. I've submitted it as a writing sample to get a writing job. along with other things. But, so submitting a pilot to someone who's asking for a writing sample, you're not necessarily attaching them to that script.
Okay.
You're not saying, this is what I want to make with you. You're just saying, this is an example of my work. They probably already have something that they want you to work on anyways. But, it might then start a conversation about that. But if you're not interested in that, no requirement whatsoever. That you move forward with them and that script. You can just use that script as your calling card to just drop in a bunch of inboxes for people who are asking, like, what kind of writer are you? And you're like, I'm this kind of writer.
So before we move on to any more, there's an audience question, but I want to bring in our fourth panelist for tonight. His name is, I want to say it right, Timon Kane. Is it Timon or Tamon?
Tamon.
Yeah. Timon Kane, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Hey, everybody.
Wonderful. You want to tell everybody who's watching a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. I'm a Pisces. I like long walks on the beach.
Hey.
But no, I'm a writer. I've been writing since I can remember, since I was 9 years old. I write for a magazine currently now. And I have a publishing company, TK Publishing indie authors. So if you have books and stuff like that, and you want to get it published, come talk to me. We can make that happen. And I'm also getting ready to release my own graphic novel.
Awesome. Great. I did not know that. We done stumbled onto somebody fancy. Look at it.
Fancy.
Okay. So I know you were backstage. You heard the question that we asked.
Yeah.
What is a writing sample? And you kind of heard the responses. Also, how you feel about writing a sample. And as a publisher, maybe you can have a perspective on what you look for in a writing sample.
Yeah. So like it changes, just like everything has changed as far as like submitting material and what that even looks like, what that feels like. You used to have a query letter. You used to have like maybe submit the first 10 pages and things like that. I want just your first 10 pages. I don't need a query letter to begin with. I want to just read your content blindly and I understand what it's about. But it's that's from being a publisher aspect. I want to see like what your writing style is, what's your purpose of your story, and then we can just move on from there. But as a writer, I can't remember your name. I'm so sorry.
Duryea?
I've recently, yeah.
Me, yeah, Duryea.
No, not yours.
Not me.
Yes.
Lena.
Okay. So I've recently submitted 6 pages of a pilot. So when I'm auditioning for a project, I don't send the entire pilot. I only send like maybe the first 6 pages, just so you can understand my writing style, that I have a concept, I understand the concept of what we're trying to talk about. And normally for me, I try to make sure that first page is so strong to where that sort of seals the deal. I'm the type of writer that I begin with like some type of narration or monologue. And if you can't understand who I am as a writer after that, then I failed you. So the first 6 pages for me is what I submit for scripts.
That's a huge reminder too, is that first page is key, because if they don't get past that,
they have to get past that. They have to get past it. It's interesting to me because last week we did a how to write a compelling teaser, and it really was more a how-to. It was more just like what we felt about what was interesting in writing techniques and such. But to me, I feel like that is literally the most important part of any writing piece ever, is the introduction to it. That's where you either hook them or they run loose. So I agree. I feel like, and this is just an assumption from a publisher standpoint, producer standpoint, someone who's looking at your work and wondering if they want to attach themselves to it, that's what they're gonna only have time to read your first few pages sometimes.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, okay. So we had an audience question. A viewer question. And the viewer says, what is the perfect subject that they might accept as a sample? Is there any specific one that they prefer? And I'm assuming that you mean like a genre, or I'm assuming genre when you say subject.
Genre, or it might even be like format.
Or so then I just guess answer as you feel as you interpret the question.
Well, I'll jump in real quick to say that it is based on what they are asking of you. So if you're submitting a sample to either someone or some company, hopefully either they have reached out to you or you have had a conversation of sorts, or you have done some research into what it is that they produce or what it is that they're passionate about. And I feel like it's going to change bit by bit, like if you're submitting, I'll just use some of the stuff that I've experienced. If you're submitting to work on comedy, like serialized comedy, then a comedy pilot would be perfect. But if you're submitting to work on, like a comic book series, maybe something more in that line with that would work. So there is no one shoe size fits all when it comes to samples. You really want it to be as close to the mark as possible. So that's going to take a little bit of engineering as to like what you feel like is the best example. That's how I feel.
I totally agree. To me, if it's like realism in this day and age, I'm going to show you what my mind is like right now. And if it's something that's more of a period piece or something, it'd be smart to really set yourself up for success in that sense,
I agree. Go ahead, Simone.
Oh yeah, I don't know if anyone else is like this, but when it like auditioning for pieces or like submitting things, I like really clear instructions. And most times they're going to give you at least a genre or a subject matter. Nickelodeon has this submission thing that they do when they have you do like spec scripts for different shows that fall up under their branch. And so they may not tell you a genre, but they'll tell you a show that you would have to write for or type of show. So I haven't been a part of any type of writing experience where they don't give any clear definition to what you're going to write about. So I agree with you that there is no one size fit all. To be specific, be very specific.
I agree too. I think it's so. I'm just gonna kind of echo what they say. If they don't tell you specifically, there's probably some hint. Like if you're blindly submitting just for work, then you take that crap.
Send your best stuff. I mean,
Right.
if it's a cold submission, just send your best work.
Absolutely. And if not, if it is something, then you kind of just want to send something close to what they're looking for. Or if it is like a TV show and you want to work on that TV show, a spec is always the best. So they want to know. And specs are really difficult because in a spec script, you have to be able to show that you can still write compelling work, but in someone else's style.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And that is the difficulty.
Yeah.
Still giving it that. Go ahead.
Not only
I was gonna say Go ahead.
No, not only that, but you have to really become a part of those characters and understand the show so well. Because in spec scripts, you're not only just like showcasing your talent, but just showcasing your knowledge of that subject matter and those characters and the choices that those characters can make. One of the most important things as a writer is like understanding characters and character development. And if you don't understand that in the spec script, because it doesn't make sense to write a spec script if you don't understand the actual choices that those characters in the show would make. And so if you don't have that part down, you're not going to be successful in my opinion.
Okay.
And what I was going to add on is just like any job interview, they want to know that you know who they are. So of course, digging a little deeper is always smart,
Yes.
Research what kind of work they've already attached themselves to.
Absolutely.
And know if you want to be a part of it.
Yeah, and that too.
I want to add one thing to the spec script conversation too, because my husband and I were actually talking about this. Because if you're submitting a spec, almost often you're looking to be a part of a writer's room, like we're talking about, which means that you need to already be able to sit in that chair and write that show as cohesively as all the other writers in the room. So you need to know the characters really well. In addition to that, though, I think it's really smart if you can somehow tailor your spec script to be a standalone episode that could be plopped anywhere in the show.
In the season.
The arc. Because then what you've done is you've written a script that they could use.
Yeah.
And could use. And that's, that's a better paycheck in the writer's room.
Yeah.
Because you're coming in with already your first script good to go and ready.
Mm-hmm.
And
I mean, if you write a spec script and you kill a main character, they're probably not going to make that script.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's nice to kind of think of it in those terms. Like, if you're writing an episode for The Flash, like what's a premise that you could create that would make a really exciting episode while not moving any of the big set pieces in their overall story?
Yeah.
Kind of like a little side note to think of when you're writing specs, because you'll get more mileage from that script if they're interested.
Yeah, I agree with that completely.
Excellent. Okay, so we will move to another question. So thank you. I'm not sure if we're getting a glitch, but it's not showing me like who's asking these questions. But I see all y'all in the comments, and we thank y'all for being here. I had a question that I wanted to ask, and it was, don't you hate when you need it to be right there and it's done moved? Oh yes, I want to talk about outlines. Says the question was, do you make an outline? But I kind of want to go even further. What does your outline look like when you make it? I don't always, and so I'll start. I don't always do outlines because to me, sometimes, like, I recently wrote a web series and it was just in my head. It was a web series, so it didn't really need to be long. There weren't any crazy plot twists. It was pretty set and dry, so I didn't feel the need to write an outline for that. But when I do my bigger stuff, especially because my favorite genre is sci-fi supernatural, and I feel like anytime you're writing in a sci-fi supernatural genre, if you don't have an outline, you're screwing yourself, because you need to know where it's going, because your audience wants it to go somewhere. It better go somewhere. And wherever you're going,
I agree with you.
It better have been going there from that first episode. That isn't a genre where you have to know your base, and your base wants plot, they want twists and turns. And so for something like that, you absolutely have an outline. The way I like to outline mine, I call them buoys. Go with me. I call them buoys because if you've ever been like in the water or at the pool, those little bullet buoys that are, so those buoys to me, so the string that holds the buoys is the whole script. The buoys are the big moments. In a script, in a screenplay, the buoy would be the end of every act. Or in a stage play, the buoy would be like the inciting incidents, the rising action, climax, that kind of thing. Those are where I start. Well, actually, I start with this first and the last. Sometimes I start from the end, but I start with one of those two. Either I see where the story begins and I then go to how I want it to end, or I do vice versa, and then I break in the point in between that lead from one place to the next. For me personally, it's better to do that because then I can then go in with the details and color as I see fit. So I like to do it like that. Once I have my beats in there, and I generally cater that to what medium I'm writing. If I'm writing on screen versus writing on stage, because plot structure is different for when you're writing on screen and writing on stage. Absolutely. If you haven't done that, or if you're planning to go from one to the other, make sure you research structure. And that
I would love to explore that question later, because I have questions, but the difference between the two. But I would love to talk about outlining, because for me, so I kind of started very novice and then quickly went to getting like $10,000 for projects. And I was like, okay, I'm doing this, but I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, but I am doing it. To me, I outline, and I love the metaphor of a buoy. It's kind of like, think about the most outrageous game of Mario Party. You know, all the traps and things. And to me, I'm like, okay, what's the perfect game of Mario Party? Who goes where? What happens how? And, you know, it's like my outline looks like a hot mess. You know, it's like hieroglyphics on a piece of paper, but that's anybody who's an artist. And I try and play God, for lack of a better phrase, and kind of see, the overlook of everything. And then I love the metaphor of a buoy too, because, and with my outline, I have all of my intentions under my characters. And, and then with actor work, what this person knows and what this person doesn't know. And then as the days go on, I'll think of a phrase or something and write it near that section of the outline. And then, or I'll be like, okay, I know I want this character if it's sci-fi. Sorry if you hear my food cooking, because it's cooking.
It's okay. Cook your food.
I'm like, okay, there are three tasks, because it's the rule is 3 for everything. So it's like, I know this one, I know the beginning, I know the end, and the middle has to do something. The middle has to really take us somewhere. So, I try and make it fun, but also like as if it's accidental. And that's the water with the buoys for me.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to say something about the question, Lena? Oh, I didn't fix the question on screen.
What is it? Yeah, sorry I did that too. I had myself on mute and we started crying and I was like, "Ugh," but he's okay. Yeah, so one thing I wanted to mention with outlines is, I know that not every writer wants or needs to adhere to a strict outline when they're writing. But one instance where you absolutely have to have one is when you're writing with a partner. And that's something that I find to be really helpful is when you sit down and you map out the script with a partner, whether you're each going to take a pass on it or whether you're going to alternate writing, you have to have a roadmap, or else you're going to end up getting that script back from your writing partner and they'll have taken a left turn when you would have taken a right, and that's where conflict can come into that collaboration. So setting up that path really clearly up front with an outline is almost 100% necessary when you're writing in collaboration. But that's one instance where it would come in handy. So even if you don't like doing outlines, it's worth kind of practicing and getting a feel for. Another thing is, when you're done with a script or, any kind of genre and you're trying to pitch it, you'll almost always have to do a pilot summary that would go in with all of your materials. So sometimes I'll start with that. Sometimes I kind of write out the summary as I would want someone to read it, like do my one sheet. And then I use that as kind of my goalpost as I move through. That's my word for it. Like you say buoys and I use goalposts. And it's the exact same process that you do, where you have those big moments. The in between, that's what you figure out, like organically as you're going through. And sometimes those things move, but you have to know where you're headed, or else you'll box yourself into a corner, or you'll write something that contradicts what you just wrote a few pages before, and it just gets into a really makes more work for yourself than you really need.
I have a quick comment before we answer and I'm gonna let Tamon. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna say it like, look, I have one of those names too, and I hate people do it. Tamon, I'm gonna let him have his response. But I wanted to say in reference to the buoys, Tamon. Okay. Okay, I got you. Right. So essentially, when you're doing the buoy thing, that's also a good indicator on whether your buoys work. If you can't connect them, maybe they don't work. And sometimes, like I've spent many days, weeks trying to connect two buoys that just weren't connected. So, and if you come into, and so that's just that I wanted to say really quick. All right. Tamon.
Hold on.
Write it down.
Hold on 3 seconds, guys.
Okay. He's having some. Oh, it's okay. But as far as outlines, the reason, so I kind of wasn't finished earlier. The thing about outlines that helps me, especially in reference to navigating the script, you also can tell your story a little better when you know where it's going. Some people like to stream of conscious write, and that's totally okay. I think sometimes that's the best thing to get you out of writer's block, just to write. Yes. Sometimes when people don't have their outline, they won't write until they have their outline, and that just stops them. But they have something they could just write.
If words come in your head, put them down.
Put them on the paper.
Yes,
every time. So okay, so Tamon. Yes. Okay. Please. What was your take on outlines? And then we're gonna go to this audience question.
Outlines are my bread and butter. I write backwards, so like I know like the ending of my movies or anything that I'm writing. So whether it's a season finale, whether it's the end of the episode, I sort of write to that. And so if I don't have an outline in place, I will have a notebook. I'll probably even type a single word. I'll have a notebook with everything I need to know about that episode or those characters. And it's full of an outline before I even type a single word. So without an outline, I will probably be lost because I write stream of conscious, but I do write backwards. So if I don't have any type of organization, none of it probably will make sense.
Okay. So the question that we have from one of our viewers, it says, as writers, do you think that a writer who is used to writing novels can write a screen script? which would be referred to as a screenplay. Correct? A screenplay.
Yeah.
What difficulties can the narrator face by twisting to screen script
Oh,
slash
it almost
screenplay?
sounds like they're talking about maybe not only just writing in a different format than you're used to, but also possibly adapting.
Yes.
Oh, it's definitely I think this is a brilliant question, and one that I think you need to know, because if I can't remember his name, but the gentleman who wrote Game of Thrones.
George R. R. Martin, the books.
George R. R. Martin. Now
Mhm.
he is a unicorn in the fact that he writes his books, in my opinion, with the plot structure of a screenplay.
Yes.
Like he writes them like they're gonna be TV shows, but he just embellishes everything, every moment. He paints a picture for you, which in screenplay writing, you can't do that as much. You can't really, you have to do it more subtly. You have to do it in a way where the other collaborators, being the cinematographer, the actors, the directors, can still have their foot in it. So for me personally, I went from writing plays and always performing with plays. So I'd said, I'm going to write a script. Now, when you're writing a play, especially being an actor, no stage directions. It was like all dialogue. Not one bit of like enter and exit was the most stage direction, because as actors, that's really all the stage direction we like. So then going to screenplays, it was very difficult because they wrote a lot more descriptions, and I didn't understand when to describe too much and too little. And for a long time, that was the note I kept getting. Oh, you need to describe this more. This is way too descriptive. So as a novelist, I think that would be the hardest thing, going from being so descriptive to figuring out when, where, how to pare that down.
You know, I agree with that. I went the opposite way, from being a screenwriter to writing a novel, and having to embellish and do more prose. Some of the feedback that I received, because I'm used to getting right to the point, saying this, and this, like you would in the screenplay, versus prose is more poetic and more elegant as it relates to the message you're trying to convey. And so,
Absolutely.
there is a big difference, and there is some type of training. However, if you can master it, that makes you really special.
I mean, I think it's important to.
No.
I didn't cut you off, right?
No.
I would say it's important to think about how the person's consuming what you're writing. So if I'm reading a novel, I have to read all these words and piece together something from my mind, So it's like, okay, there's this room. I have to think about the room. I have to hear all the I have to read all the descriptive words. Whereas with film, the eye is taking in 24 frames per second, and you can see a whole story. You can get a whole page in like 5 seconds. So I think it's just think about what the person is taking in and see how you can reduce that to a pill that's really easily swallowable.
That's the best advice. Yes.
Yeah. What I would say with this question is, first of all, 100% yes. Someone who's used to writing novels can totally write a screenplay. Talented writers are talented writers, no matter what they're writing in. A lot of it comes down to, do you enjoy writing in these formats? And are you willing to do the work and research to do it right? That's the only trick to it. As far as the difficulties, I mean, they've all talked about a lot of the difficulties going from one to the other. The big one that I would consider is, unless you're writing, a book into a series, kind of like you mentioned with Game of Thrones, it's going to be pared down. Almost always, a novel has a much more wealth of story than you can fit into the length of movie that people are willing to sit through. So you have to you might have to kill some of your darlings. You'll have to prioritize really carefully as to what is essential to the story and is still going to make it really impactful with whatever point of view you're coming at it with. That's, to me, the trickiest part, is figuring out what to keep and what to lose. But I have a funny anecdote, because you brought up George R. R. Martin, and I have a friend of him, and when he first started writing those books, he was trying intentionally to write something that would be so expensive that no one would ever be able to produce it, because he was so sick of people wanting to make his work and then not being able to pull it off. But then eventually the technology caught up to us, and we were able to made dragons galore. So,
but that might be why that was so successful. I feel like the hardest thing about screenwriting, in my opinion, is budget thinking.
Yes.
Like you have to think about the practicality of what you're writing, which I think is totally not a thing with novels.
Well, I would
you don't
say,
ever have to think about that.
I would say sometimes you have to think about the practicality, because if you are writing
novels,
well, I mean, in writing a screenplay, because if you're
Okay.
writing a screenplay and you know the budget, yes, you have to think very strategically about how expensive what you're writing is and how it might be accomplished. But if you are writing your story, like if you have a script in your head that you want out, I would say don't worry about the budget, at least not at first, because you don't know. You know what I mean? Like you don't know what kind of budget you're given. There's always, especially now in the time of COVID, there's a lot of talk of doing things with animation. And so, you could have a giant robot versus airplane dinosaur fight. It'd be the same price as
it sounds like you described Lovecraft Country.
I love that.
I haven't seen it yet.
I
haven't seen it. I have a lot. I haven't seen I Am King either. Black is King. I haven't seen it either.
I haven't seen that, but
I just have so much on my list. I know, but
Lovecraft is a work of art.
Oh, I hear that. But I feel like when it comes to writing a screenplay, especially when you want to get made, you have to think of a lot of factors. I agree with 1,000% with what Lena said. Like, don't ever shoot yourself in the foot because you are worried about a budget. Like, write what you write, and if it's good and somebody wants to make it, that's going to happen. But I also think that if it depends on what you're trying to do with the script. Are you just trying to sell it? If you want to just sell the script, I think you could just write away. If they want to buy it, they're probably going to buy it and then do whatever they want to do to it anyway. But if you're trying to attach yourself to the script and you don't have a name, and this is just stuff I've been, and I say, I hate that phrase, when you're not someone who has a long resume or massive connections and you're writing it and you want to attach yourself to it, you have to understand people don't know you. They don't know how you work. And they might not be willing to give you as much money as they would Michael Bay. So just considering that, like, I think will help you determine whether you want to sell a script or attach yourself to it.
And that kind of brings us, I don't know, I'm kind of like moving into what could be another question.
Go ahead.
But it would behoove you to kind of know what the expensive parts of a script are. So, because like, for instance, I had a script not too long ago that I was working with a production company, and we had to cut our budget in half. And so as the writer, I had to
mid-shoot?
Not mid-shoot, but pre-production.
Okay.
And so I had to go back into the script and figure out how to save cost, right? And so you have to kind of know what would do that, right? And some of the most expensive things in a script are locations and cast. So if you can make the cast smaller and you can limit the number of locations, you're going to save a lot of money for that production. I had another script a while ago that someone read and they were like, this is too expensive. So I took out like this insane, riverboat helicopter scene. And I was like,
it sounds awesome.
It does.
I know. So I think that's also key is, if you're just writing whatever and you get the note back that this would be too expensive to produce, know what cost saving measures you are willing to take. So you can already have that kind of alternate version in your head. So you don't feel disappointed writing it or taking something out. So you kind of just know what pieces you want to move around.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I feel that there are also really easy ways, not easy ways, but like, if somebody's in space, we don't need to see them in a rocket ship taking off through space inside the spaceship. There are mechanisms you can use with your words to put us in that world.
Yeah. And then depending on like the subject matter, like I love horror or suspense, so I like to write about slashers. So you can easily change the location and film it in one location or one town or one house and make it amazing. Like Paranormal Activity probably was so inexpensive to film, but such an impactful movie.
True. Short cast.
I could not agree more.
Yeah, look.
The part in Paranormal where the Reverend walks in and then he's like, "Oh, I can't be here. I gotta go," and just leaves. I'm like, What? The reference? There's usually a 20-minute reference scene, and he just left.
That's turned it on its head. I mean, like Blumhouse, which is a popular horror production company, they were sourcing scripts not too long ago that could be produced in COVID, right? And so I almost feel like with the way that everyone has been kind of locked indoors for the last several months, it's kind of rewired a lot of writers' thinking to where they're seeing the possibilities of, oh shit, excuse me, I just guessed. Oh crap, what would it be like if we only had one camera and everything had to take place right here. And so that's one thing, if you're looking to write a script that could be easily produced right now, try to make it somehow vlog based. That would be key, which to say like use, cameras that are easily accessible.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we've got about 10 minutes. So I wanted to add another question. I have more, but if either Tamon.
You're thinking. I think you're going to Tamar Braxton.
That's what I'm doing. That's literally how I'm remembering it.
Trust me, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you.
I'm like Tamar. No, okay, Tamon. Right. That's why I keep messing up. But okay. Do you have a question? Did you prepare a question? I'm only skipping you, TK, because I know you.
I do have a question, actually.
Okay. Would you like to ask your question?
When sourcing and getting contracted, what is for a pilot? What is a good amount to charge to write a pilot for a show?
Ooh.
Because I've been in negotiations, and I feel like sometimes the amount that's offered doesn't make any sense. And so I've been doing some reading, and they say you should charge by the hour, and at minimum they say $100 per page, per minute. I charge per minute. It's like $100 per minute. So if it's a 60-page pilot, then $600 or $6,000. $600.
Yeah.
I was doing the math, and I was like, I think that's $6,000, but whatever,
Yeah.
Yeah, please, Lena.
You can go by the hour, or you can go by the page. For a lot of my writing, I go by the page, and I have like my ideal rate, and then I have my like okay fine rate.
Do you mind sharing one of those rates with us?
$80 a page is my low ball, and so that's my like okay. What is your budget?
Where did you start?
Where did I start per page? I started at $50 a page. When on my first writing job, it was $50 a page. But then I found out that my husband, who was working for the same company, was making more. So I went up on my rate.
As you should.
Oh, yeah.
You should. Thank you.
I'm also non-union. I'm not in the guild. But I like to go to the WGA website a lot to see what they have this. I don't know what it's like right now, because like there was so much back and forth that I don't know if they have it, but they have something called a schedule of minimums that they put out usually every year, where it's what the Writers Guild has decided should be the minimum ask for a screenplay, for a television episode, for a documentary. Well, I guess you don't write a documentary, but you know what I mean. Short form, digital, whatever. And so I look at that and I'm like, okay, so that's what they're charging. I'm non-union, so I can ask for that rate, but I would probably expect for it to come back that I'll make a little less until I'm ready to join the guild.
I have a question about that. Okay, because I'm always weird about like, maybe I'll take it personally, like for asking what I want, which is above what I think I can get, and then letting them decide. Yeah. So how do you determine that? Because I think for me, it's like, I don't, you know what I mean? I don't know. I don't want to be presumptuous, because I feel like, what if I ask for way too much and they're like, this motherfucker right here is crazy, and then they don't want to work with me no more,
Here's the way I like to do it in my emails, where I say, I literally blame it on the WGA, and I'll say the WGA minimum is X, but it depends on your budget. And I'll just leave it at that. Because one, the first thing, it's a fact. Like that is the minimum on the WGA. That's not me saying anything personal about their project or me asking for anything specific at all.
Right. It's a standard in the
it depends on your budget. I'm not judging your budget. I'm not saying that, you should try and match that or meet that. I'm just letting you know that's where I'm starting at. So let's talk about your budget and what's possible. That's how I like it.
Do you ever get in situations where they're like, here's what I can offer, but if it gets picked up, you get a percentage of the process, a percentage of the royalties or whatever you call it. So how do you navigate the situation?
If there's money down the line,
shoulda, coulda, wouldas. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. A lot of deals are set up that way, where you get an upfront, or you get some sort of baseline, and then there's all these other milestones where, like, if it gets bought, you get this, or if it goes to series, you get this, or even for movies, like if it makes a certain threshold of profits, then this kicks in, and that's just something that producers have to get really creative about how to fund these projects, and so I would look at that as, okay, that's great. Assume that you're only getting what they're offering you up front, because nothing else is guaranteed. So I would take that first chunk of money and see, am I willing to do this amount of work for that amount of pay? Yes, let's go. If there's more money down the line, gravy. Like, that would be amazing. But sometimes they like to dangle it as if it might make you want to do it more. But those numbers may or may not ever come to fruition.
I hate to cut you off, only because I see a viewer question, and I think it's best answered by you, Lena. And I know that we're kind of coming up on the 7 o'clock.
Toys? No, I'm kidding.
Is it about what?
I said, is it about toys?
No, it's not about toys. But I just think, just knowing you, I think this is a question that you would be better suited to answer. So the question is, if you are a writer and wanted to direct your own screenplay, how do you write your script? Will you avoid directing where the camera should be focusing on?
To me, this is kind of an easy question, because you would just write it as you would write any other thing. I mean, whether you're the director or you're not, I would give myself probably the same amount, if not more, direction, because as you're writing, you tend to visualize things. And if you're also going to be directing it, put it in there so you don't lose it, and you can think of it later. Another thing is, maybe you want to direct it when you're writing it, but you don't know what the future will hold. If I wrote a script that I planned on directing and I got into the pre-production world and, Steven Spielberg wanted to direct it, I would say yes. So,
right.
I mean, I would treat it as any other script, except for maybe adding in more kind of feedback for the director, so you don't forget those moments that you're thinking of as you're going through it. What do you guys?
Yeah, if I could chime in, because I've only done that. I've only, like, whenever I do a project, I'm wearing every single hat in the damn building. So it's like, to me, it's like, it gives, if anybody has a question, I have my justification right there. I'll say, well, if you read right here, they're coming from here, and he just said this, and he just looked back. You know what I mean? To me, it's like, it helps me not feel crazy, because being a writer and a director, it's hard. It's like wearing multiple hats. It can get you in trouble if you don't have your homework ready.
True.
It's like passion versus the business side of things. Because the director has to be strict and on point about what the vision is, versus you as the writer. This is what I want it to look like. This is what I feel it looks like. But the director's like, this is what it actually looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, I absolutely hate being an actor and a director in a project, because that's just like, I cannot let go. It's really hard to do that. But the balance of writer and director, if you set yourself up for success, there's no room for failure, especially when you're on other people's time, which equals money.
Right. And so I'm going to chime in really quick here, and then we're going to wrap it up for tonight. For me, I think it depends on what you want with the script. Are you writing this one script so that you can direct this one thing? Then sure, write it how you want to direct it. Are you trying to start a career as both a director and a writer through this script? If that's the case, I would say challenge yourself to write it as if you were going to sell it. Because if at some point in the future you do decide to sell your script, you want to write it so that someone else will. But I also agree with everything you're saying about making sure somewhere you have it, that these choices that you want to make and why. But I do know, just from my personal experience, one of the biggest things has been, if you're writing something and you're not directing it, don't tell people what to do. Don't tell the camera where to be. Don't do any of that. So it really depends on what you want. So if you're like, hey, I really have this idea for a movie and I'm only going to do it if I'm directing it, then absolutely do what you want. But if you're like, I want to direct it, but if somebody else wants to direct it, I'm cool. Then I think you should write it with as little direction from the camera and stuff as possible. So that way, go ahead, Lena.
I was going to say, and maybe a middle ground to that would be, you know, if you have the urge to put like the camera in certain positions as you're writing the script, maybe you should be writing your shot list at the same time.
Boom. 2 birds in one stone.
You literally are taking off your writer's hat, putting on your director's hat, and doing that work alongside instead of kind of blurring it too much.
Well, this was a lot of fun. We do we do events through Woe Nelly Media's Woe Nelly Media online community called The Writers Room, which you can find on Facebook. Just go to the Facebook groups, type in The Writers Room, and you can add us. Or you can go to WoeNellyMedia.com. Woe Nelly, let me throw that up on the screen. Woe Nelly Media.
Whoa.
I know, whoa. WOE, right? WOE, Woe Nelly Media. And if you search, and you can find a link to the Facebook group there. We do every week. We have an event like this. Sometimes we read live readings and give feedback with a little glass of wine. We do seminars. Next month, we're having a seminar on playwriting from the chair of performing arts at Clemson University. So please come for that. It'll be fun. We're doing all kinds of great stuff. Peer support, writers supporting writers, actors supporting actors. It's all love. I would like to thank everyone for being here. And I would love for you all to come back and see us. If you want to get your work workshopped, then just contact us and let us know. Thank you all and have a very good night.